Welcome to the Nickels and Dimes Finding Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and I look forward each and every week to bringing you amazing content that will provide you with a financial education, will support you on your financial journey, and most importantly, help you to find financial freedom. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Nickels and Dimes Finding Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and today I get to talk to my good friend, John Serrano. John is originally from New Jersey and in 2018 moved to Arizona. He's married to his beautiful wife, Tony, and they have two kids, a daughter who is 20 and a son that is 13. John played football, basketball, and baseball growing up as a kid. So a 3-sport athlete, which is a very busy schedule for your mom, especially, I'm sure. But he spent 15 years as a union electrician. He worked his way up the ladder and was a foreman running million-dollar jobs until he retired himself right around 2 years ago to work alongside his wife, Tony, to build their financial services business. And so I have the opportunity to work with John and his wife. Tony's been a guest on this podcast a couple times already, and John's been patiently waiting for his turn. So John, thanks for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you and share a little bit about your story with the listeners.
Oh man, Natalie, it's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I have been waiting for that phone call. But I just want to say real quick before we get started, I just want to say, Natalie, I'm super proud of you, what you're doing with this show. Obviously you're having huge success with that. You say I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. I feel like I'm 20 myself, so I don't know how that's possible. but no, I appreciate you and asking me to come on. And like I said, I'm super proud of you, and I know you're having so much success with the show. So I'm ready. Let's go.
Awesome.
I'm ready. I've been waiting for this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The whole intent behind this is just to get more information out there. And, some of the episodes are educational, and September is Life Insurance Awareness Month. So 2 weeks ago, or last week, the episode that dropped was really an educational episode on life insurance, the different types there are, the riders that come with them. But it was really at, that direct, here's what it is, here's what it does level. And I know right around the time I recorded that episode, you posted a reel on Instagram talking about your family story and your dad having life insurance. And I knew that was the time. Okay, I need John to come on and talk about this, because it's great for me to get out there and tell people, here's what's available, here's how it works. It can be affordable, blah, 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 blah. But sometimes what we miss is the difference that having those things in place makes for a family. And that's why I think your story is so important to really help people, especially this month when we're focusing on life insurance, to understand what it can do for a family when the worst case situation happens. So before we jump into the meat of it, though, I got to ask you my icebreaker question. John, if you could be a superhero, any superhero, who would it be and why?
Ooh, man. I would say Superman, because
Okay.
I always wanted to fly.
There
I
you
want
go.
to fly. I want to fly around, right? But yeah, I would say Superman, because there's no mask or whatever. You don't want to cover this beautiful face. I'm just kidding. But
You don't. You don't, John.
But honestly, I feel like right now where I'm at in my life, I say that and I feel like I'm flying. Honestly, I'm super happy right now. The life is great, healthy kids, healthy family, everything's great. So, it's I am flying. I'm very happy, and it's all what we tell ourselves, right? So I would say I am Superman.
Yeah.
Already. Yeah.
I agree. You are. And that's the thing that, I love about this question is there's so much of whichever character somebody chooses, there's so much of that in them. And like, that's something I've seen from you since day one. that Tony came into the business and really started building this. You've always been that support, but when you stepped in full time to build this business together, you guys created something that's changing people's lives, that's saving people's lives. And I'm honored to get to do the same thing through my business. Um, and I don't know that people really realize, maybe they think it's an exaggeration when we talk about how the work we do saves people's lives, but that's what we're going to get into today. That having the right things in place and doing the right things to protect your family, to protect your assets, all of that kind of stuff along the way does make the difference in saving your family's life when something happens. So I think that's a perfect match. Superman's a great pick.
Oh yeah. So
And
yeah,
I mean,
on that point, Natalie, real quick, and I don't mean to cut you off, but you
no,
just
you're
kind of
good.
sparked something. But you know, yeah, what we're doing here is so important, protecting people, right? The education that we provide people, because they're not teaching our kids in school about financial education. They never taught me, right? But you know, we're building a business for ourselves and our family, for our kids, right? Something that we're passionate about, right? Like Natalie said, I was an electrician for 15 years. I loved what I did, right? But
Yeah,
then when I saw this business, I was like, man, there's so much more to life. There's so much more to life. And listen, we get paid very well, right? We help, unless we help a family, we don't get paid, right? But
right.
we do get paid very well. But I don't do this for that. I do this for when that family, the education that we teach, and us providing that roadmap to help them meet their goals and dreams, right? And they turn to you. And this has happened to me a couple of times already. And it's the best feeling in the world, right? Is when that family sits down and says, John, Tony, whoever it is, right? Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for helping us meet our goals. That is the best feeling in the world, right? And like I said, it doesn't matter the amount of money you make, right? That is why I do this, right? That is why I do what I do. Is that I'm getting chills right now, honestly, because like it's happened to me a few times, right? And every time I sit down with a family, right, that's the goal, right? Is to making them feel like that, right? To feel like they had somebody that sat there and listened and gave them the roadmap to where they want to be on their goals. Their life is not my life. It's our job to just listen and provide that roadmap for them.
Yeah.
So that you just sparked that on me, Natalie, a little
No,
bit.
I appreciate you saying that because it is so important. Just this weekend, I got to share information about what we do and at a women's retreat, and my breakout session was really about money mindset and where that comes from and talking about the history of our families, what we were and weren't taught. So it was really based around that, and then talking about budgeting, creating that first foundation that everything else builds upon over time. And it was amazing to me that the majority of these women that I was sitting with said they didn't have a formal budget. And these women are in my age group, between maybe 10 years younger than me to 10 years older than me. And it made me think about when I was 46 years old and came across this business. I'd spent 20 years in corporate America doing finance and accounting. And I was pissed when I found out the things I didn't know. And the fact that I didn't really understand how my 401k worked, right? I was going to work doing my job, paying attention to the numbers that fed somebody else's family, but I wasn't paying attention to the numbers that fed mine. And that was for me was the big thing is I need to be out there changing people's lives. And it starts with the basics and you build from there. And like you said, it's what's important to them. And then we're going to give them options. We're going to show them a roadmap on how to reach those goals and dreams because they're different for everybody. Wealth is not the number in your bank account. Money is a tool, and wealth is what you create with that. So you can use that tool to have things. There's nothing wrong with wanting things, but a lot of people want to just be happy. And it's a tool to do the things and have the things that make you happy, to give your family opportunities and to protect them. And so
Yep.
I love that you kind of laid that foundation to this conversation. Um, I think where I want to start, John, is just have you give, you know, kind of the background on your dad passing away and life insurance, and we'll kind of dig into some specifics from there. But yeah,
Right.
just share a little bit of your story, if you will.
I'm, I'm not going to cry. All right. I'm going to say that right
Yeah,
now.
you will.
So like Natalie said in the beginning, right? I'm originally from New Jersey, relocated to Arizona. I grew up in um, a I grew up in a little bit of a wealthy town. My dad owned a business. He owned a gas station. He owned a couple of them. Yeah, I think he owned like three at the biggest point of his career or whatever. But he sold two off, and he kept the one that basically that I remember. Right, I don't remember the other ones. I remember this one. But my dad was a person that would be the only parent as I was growing up, three-sport athlete. He would be the only parent in the stands watching me play baseball, watching me play football, watching me play basketball. He was there all the time. I remember that very clearly. And that's something that I strive for as myself, right? Is like being there for my son, right? Making sure that he and my daughter, obviously, right? My daughter's obviously older now, but when she was growing up, I was at every sporting event that she was. I was coach. I love doing that. I love giving back to the kids from what I learned. And I that's something that I remember from him. He was always there. He would adjust his schedule to whatever I had going on, right? And that's one of my proudest memories and one of the biggest memories that I remember, that he was just always there for me, right? So I want to be there for my kids as well. But so I grew up in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, and I went to a Catholic school. I was Catholic schoolboy all growing up through grammar school, and even through high school. Right, I went to Don Bosco Prep, so all boys high school. Very good at sports. Very they were good. They were ranked nationally for football and baseball and all that stuff or whatever. So the sports there, and that's kind of why I wanted to go there, because I'll be straight with you. I did not enjoy school that much, right? But I enjoyed playing baseball, right? I
Yeah.
enjoyed playing football. I love sports, right? But growing up, that's where I went, right? And like I said, my dad was there, but and then after high school, I started going to college, realized that that wasn't really for me, right? And I started working at my dad's gas station. I started working there with him, right? Kind of just doing the family business kind of thing, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was 19, 18, 19, 20 years old, trying to figure out life, right? What did I want to be, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, I thought I was like, you know what? I'm going to take over the family business or whatever it is, right? Well, I was 22 at the time, 21, 22 at the time. And my dad got diagnosed with cancer. He had esophageal cancer. He got diagnosed. He battled for 2 years with that. Him and my mom, they were married for a very long time and all that stuff. My mom is the best. But he so for 2 years he battled cancer, and now I didn't realize that God was basically preparing me, and why I left school or whatever, and all that stuff or whatever. School wasn't for me, but I went to the gas station and started learning how the business worked, right? And then, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years of me working there, that's when my dad got diagnosed, and he battled for 2 years. Now, did my dad have life insurance? Yes, he did. Right. But he did not have a life insurance policy with living benefits
Mhm.
there. Right. So I feel, right, that if there was a living benefits aspect to it, right, and I feel this with everybody, right, we should, when we're battling some type of disease, right, that we're sitting here fighting for our life, we should not have that added stress on how we're going to pay our bills every single month, how we're going to, provide for our family, whatever it is, right? While we're dealing with something like that, that is not
Mhm.
helping the cause.
Yeah.
It's not helping the cause at all, right? And so, like I said, just back up a little bit. 2 years he battled. 2006, April 18th. My dad passed away from his battle. He lost the battle to cancer. Right. It's actually I love this story because my dad was a huge Yankees fan. Huge, we're a Yankee family. Love baseball. Huge Yankee fan. And in April 18th is when actually the original Yankee Stadium opened that same day.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and just happened to be that my dad passed away on the same day. I don't know if I look at signs.
Yeah.
I look at signs and stuff like that, right? And I'm like, wow. I actually, the reason why I found this out was because I was going through some of the stuff from when I was a kid in the attic of my mom's house, and he had this collectible bus when for like the collectible for when Yankee Stadium was open, and right on the top of the bus was the date it opened, was April 18th. I was like, whoa. I'm like, man. So I didn't realize this until after, a couple of years after he had passed or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. Like I always look at that, like the connections of things and whatnot. But you know, like I said, my dad passed away in 2006, right? He had life insurance, and I'm super grateful for him for that, for protecting his family, because my mom works right now. She's 70 years old, 60, 69, 70 years old right now. And she works still, right? But she does it because it's like her social hour, right?
Yeah.
She goes to work because she enjoys it. She works in a gourmet food store right now, that in the same town that I grew up in. So she sees like all the parents that she sat in the stands with while they were watching us play baseball and football, all this stuff. She sees some of my friends stop in, and they all come in, and they see her or whatever. They all know she's there, right? And
Yeah.
I still talk to them every once in a while. And they're always saying, "Oh, I stopped to see your mom the other day," or whatever. They always stop in, and whatnot. So I think it's awesome, But like I said, she doesn't need to work. She does it because it's it fulfills her right now, right? She never remarried, right?
Yeah.
My dad was her love, and she widowed, and that was it, right? But then I tell her all the time, I'm like, Mom, sell the house. She still lives in the same house that I grew up in,
That's
right?
amazing.
And like everything, she redid it and all this stuff or whatever. But I'm like, Mom, just she's in New Jersey, and I'm like, Mom, just sell the house. Sell the house. Like my dad died in this house, like, and my grandmother died in this house as well.
Oh,
Both of them
wow.
did. Right. So I'm like, sell the house and like come out to Arizona for 6 months out of the year. Come enjoy your grandkids out here and whatnot. And she's she won't do it. Right. And you know, I don't know the reason, right? I think it's sometimes it's hard to let go of something,
Yeah.
right?
For
It's
sure.
definitely hard. It's definitely hard to let go of something, right? But what I saw, you know, when my dad passed away, what I saw my mom go through with dealing with a gas station, his money getting locked up in probate, all these things that just were, you know, you don't realize how important a trust is, a will is, all these different things until you're going through it,
Yeah.
right? And when I saw this business, that's what my passion is, right? Because I didn't want another family to have to go through what my mom went through, right?
Yeah.
So making sure all that stuff is in play, and all that stuff. But you know, there is a big reason why I started this business, why I joined this business, and the passion I have for it. Right, like I said in the beginning, right, a family telling us, me and my wife, whoever it is, right, one of our agents telling us thank you for making
Yeah.
sure is what is so important, right? Because I don't want people, when I see a GoFundMe page on Facebook, right, it's like, man, especially for somebody that I've reached out to,
Yeah.
that I've tried to help, right? it hurts my soul. It hurts my heart so much, you know? So, you know, what we do here is so important. Um, and I don't want anybody to go through what my mom had to go through with all that stuff, with the courts and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
said, she's working because she loves it. She loves it, right? And I'm not gonna stop her from doing that at all, right? I'm
Yeah.
not gonna, you know what I mean? So, that's kind of like my backstory of what I went through, right? And let me back up. So, my dad dies in 2006, and I joined and I started running his business,
Okay.
right? I started running his business, me and my mom. Now, it was not in the greatest area. It was not in a great area at all. His business, his gas station was in Paterson, New Jersey. You know, um, and after, like I said in the beginning, I thought I wanted to run his business, but then, and I wanted to be in the family business. But then when he was no longer there
Yeah.
and I was sitting in his chair, right? I, something came over me that I was like, you know what? This is not what I want. I do not want to live my dad's life. I don't want to live this. I don't want to be, it was too many
Yeah.
memories for me. Right. And let's be straight. I was 22 years old running a business. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. you know, you know,
Yeah. For
I was
sure.
trying to figure out my life right then and there. You know what I mean? But, you know, and something that, and I'm going to be very transparent, right? 22 years old and running a business, having a cash business, right? Having that, right? And you're dealing with something that somebody that just that you cared for dearly, you loved them, you looked up to them. He was my hero, right? It was very hard to deal with,
Yeah.
right? And some of the things that I did probably weren't the smartest, right? I won't change them, right? Because I learned, I grew through it, right? And I thank the Lord every single day that I'm still here, that I'm not 6 feet under, that I'm not behind bars, right? That I'm able to be here for my kids and my wife, right? And I thank him every day for it, right? But like it was a growth moment for myself, right? And I believe in life that we have to take what we learned, right? Mistakes, whatever it is, right? And we have to look at them as a learning experience, right? And
Absolutely.
you know, so
I think
but
you touched
that's my story a little bit, just so you know. I
that's
kind
your
of
story.
I got ADD and I'm kind of all over the place, so I don't know if I jumped
You're
around a little bit. I
good.
probably did, but it makes sense in my head.
Yeah, no, it was perfect, John.
Mhm.
You touched on a couple things that I think are important, and the first one is legacy. And I don't even know that you necessarily intended it to be that way, but you talked about the fact that your dad was the one parent. I'm sure there were a lot of parents in the stands, but he was the one parent that was always there. Um, and he got to be there and he got to cheer you on. You could look over your shoulder and see there's my dad.
Mhm.
And I think that so many things in life happen, um and they can create hardship, they can create struggle, but they also happen to create the things we get to carry with us. And one of the things that, I tell people all the time is, you know, money can't buy happiness, but it can give you opportunities to create it. And to me, happiness is creating the memories, which are the things you can take with you and leave behind, regardless of the money. And so I see you and Tony do the exact same thing. I see you guys in your schedule building time to sit and watch Carlos practice. And, you know, I see Tony goes and visits your daughter at college, or when she comes home, like, you guys are plugged in and you're making your family a priority. And I've always respected and loved that so much about you guys. Now I have a little more understanding of, the seed that got planted by your dad that you guys are carrying forward. Um, but also that because he did that, you get to carry that. Like, he may have
Mhm.
left a lot sooner than he maybe should have. by our timelines, right? Somebody else is in charge of all of that, clearly, um, but that's something you've always been able to keep. And that's a perfect example of what I said before. Wealth is not the amount that's in your bank account. Wealth is what you have um with your family. It's your relationships, and that's a different kind of wealth. Like money can't buy that wealth. So I love that part of your story because I've always seen you and Tony doing that, making your kids a priority and building a very successful business at the same time. But now I know a little more about where that came from, and I love that you're carrying that forward. Um, I'm pretty sure your dad's pretty proud of that. So there's
Hope
that.
so. I hope so.
Um, and the other
But you
thing,
know, God,
yeah,
God.
well, the other thing I was just going to say that you touched on is the importance of not just having a life insurance in place, but there's so many nuances around it. For example, the importance of having a trust means that your assets do not go to probate. So while there may still be in the processing of a life insurance when somebody passes, possibly, I mean, the average life insurance policy pays out about 3 months later, right? So there's a couple of things that come into that. Now, one, if your assets go to probate, that's a whole other story. It can take years, it can take months, it can take hiring an attorney, spending a whole bunch of money to pay an attorney to get as much as possible to go to the family the way that it was designed. And so there is that component that's really, really important as far as that goes. But there's also what you talked about with living benefits, and those being added onto a life insurance policy can cover some of the expenses while somebody's still alive. So during that 2-year battle your dad had, if you guys had access to some of that life insurance. Now, yeah, if you use it while you're still living, it means there's less when you're gone, but the weight that can lift off your shoulders that you touched on, and the freedom to be able to, like, gosh, if I only have 2 years left, to be able to have the ability to not only pay the bills that come along with the health battle that you're waging, but to be able to, I don't know, hire people to help at the gas station so he had even more time, or take trips and do things that can build even more memories, right? Um, are so important. And then that gap that there is between when somebody passes and when the life insurance pays out, which is where we have final expense insurance that pays out immediately to cover those costs and can truly avoid those GoFundMe accounts. In some cases, those GoFundMe's just need to pay the funeral costs until the life insurance pays out. In other times, it's to support the family moving forward because they didn't have life insurance at all. And so, yeah, those conversations we get to have with clients who say, let's go back to the Superman reference that you made. That's how we save people's lives. That's how we save people's lives. And that's why our clients sit down and say, thanks for showing up. Thanks for caring.
And
Um,
it's the conversations that we have, right? There are conversations that a lot of people try to avoid, right? But they're necessary,
100%.
right? They're very, very necessary to have them, but it takes us grow, like I said, right? We have to learn from our mistakes and grow and
Yeah.
learn and all that stuff, right? But it's us growing ourselves, right? To be able to have those tough conversations with people, right? Because not a lot of people, I mean, not a lot of people want to talk about their finances, want to talk about things like that, right? But it's sometimes it takes the bigger person to bring it up, right? And
Yeah.
and whatnot. But when you when we and I always go back to the sports, like right now, like yeah, there was other people in the stands with my dad for games. My
Yeah.
dad was there for practices
Yep.
every single day. He was there before we even got on the field,
Mhm.
and he was in the stands, right? And he was just there, right? And even to this day, right? Myself, right? Right now, the business that we have, right? Before I used to have to go to work, punch a clock, have to be there certain hours, right? To get bonuses, to get this, to get all this kind of stuff, right? My life revolved around that,
Yeah.
right? with this business now and what we do and what we're building, right? I can build my business around my life,
Yeah.
right? And do what I have to do, right? So that's why right now I go out to the field. My son's playing baseball right now, right? I'm not coaching him. He's playing through the school. They have their coaches and stuff like that. But I'm the only person in the stands watching him. Right now, I'm sitting in my car because it's 110 degrees in Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm watching it.
Not in the stands in the car,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
But I'm there. I'm watching. And it even comes to a point where, like, the coach came up to me and was like, "Hey, like, I can bring Carlos home. Like, I could bring your son home for you, just so you don't have to be here the whole time." And I'm like, "No, no, no. This is exactly where I want to be."
Yeah.
Like, it even took the coach to be like, "What do you mean?" Like, and I had to explain to him, like, this is exactly where I need to be. This is where I want to be, right? And I'm going to watch him and everything he does, right? Every single day. Every
Yeah.
single day I'm out there and I'm doing it. Now the weather's starting to get a little bit nicer. Now maybe I'll get out of my car and actually stand on the sit in the stands or whatever. But you know, it just you know I didn't realize before when I was an electrician that how much our job takes away from our life.
Yeah.
And being able to do that and be there for him. Now I always tried, even when I was working, right, I always tried to be there for him, whether I had to ask somebody if they could cover for me or whatever, ask to take time off, all that stuff. I always put my family first, right? But being able now to run this business and, just scheduling my day and my weeks just about around him, around my daughter, around my family, right, is a true, true blessing, right? I'm super grateful for that, right? And now, like, I can really follow in my father's footsteps, right? And not have just the job aspect of things or whatever over my on the weight of my shoulders. Like, oh, am I going to get fired because I'm leaving to go be with my kid, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So it's a huge, huge weight lifted off your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Absolutely. And that's really, when I transitioned full time into this business and retired myself from corporate America, it was the same thing. I didn't want to, I didn't want to live to work. I wanted to work to live.
Mhm.
And I wanted that work to be on my terms. And, it's at different stages in your life, it's different things. When you have kids, if you can plug into them and be as present as possible. And look, I understand that having to take time off or ask permission or okay, I'm going to leave early to go to the game, but then when I get home, I'm going to log back on my computer and finish my work or whatever. And I had a lot of flexibility as far as that goes, but then I got to be at the game, but then when he's home after the game, I'm back working. And so to have that shift, to be able to adjust those things. And my son was a senior in high school when I started my business part-time. So I didn't get that chance as a single mom um to have that flexibility, but I definitely did my best to be everywhere I could, within the schedule that I had, but then create that, now to where I'm here for my parents and Braxton's home from the military. So I get a lot more time with him now. And and just to be able to focus where it's most important later in life than I probably would have liked, but still to be able to have that, it's really important.
Yeah, but now you're building a business with him,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right?
Now he's in the business with me and it's
Mhm.
something that we get to do together for sure. With the idea that when he's married and he has kiddos, he'll have more of that flexibility. He won't have to juggle and figure it out along the way. And I know
Mhm.
that's what you guys are focusing on, for your kids too. Carlos is still young, so he can't get his license yet.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a legacy that we can build and pass on in so many different ways. And I know that's a focus for you guys.
Yep.
Um, so let me ask you this question. When your dad passed, things went through probate and all of that stuff. But once you guys got settled and the life insurance paid out, what are some of the ways that having those assets, even though you didn't have all the bells and whistles that exist today, um, and that we tried to put in place for our clients, what are some of the ways that having that life insurance impacted your family and helped manage the financial aftermath of losing a loved one?
Okay. That's a great question. And I remember this very clearly. I was not in the financial industry back then. I was running a gas station. I didn't know anything about money, but thankfully, right, my mom had some people that she surrounded herself with that did, right? So the money that she got from her the life insurance, right? She put it somewhere. I don't know the account that she put it in or any of that kind of stuff. But she did have somebody show her, and the interest that it made every single month, right? It paid our mortgage
Mm,
every month. So the money that we were making from the gas station, from our jobs, all that kind of stuff, only just had to pay for basic, utilities, car, gas, that kind of stuff or whatever. But our
yeah,
our mortgage and the roof that we had over our head was paid for every month by the interest that the money from the life insurance policy was making. So that's the impact that it had on me. And that's a huge, huge benefit, right? Not having to
yeah,
pay, not having to come up with an additional $3,000 mortgage every single month, right? Because we did live in New Jersey and it's not cheap to live there, right?
yeah,
Taxes are very expensive, right? So, but that's a huge, huge weight lifted off everybody's shoulders there, so
yeah,
that's kind of the benefit of what the life insurance did for our family,
yeah,
and my mom's still living in that house,
yeah.
same house.
Well, and if she put it somewhere, then that's money that when she does decide to stop working, or if she has to at some point, that if she put that somewhere, that's money she's going to have to be able to maintain the lifestyle that she wants, that your dad wanted her to have,
Right.
um, because she put that somewhere, right? So
Yep.
that's, I mean, that's the same conversations we're having. And I've talked before, telling the story about my parents is that they didn't have any of that stuff. And what my parents had was the red folder, John. The red folder. And my brother and I would go over there and they're like, one of these days we have to sit down and look at the red folder. And, being completely transparent, my brother and I are like, we don't want to look at the red folder because the red folder has all the stuff in it that makes you have the conversation about someday when mom and dad aren't here,
Yep.
and loss and sadness, right? Like that's what the red folder contained. We didn't think about the financial documents in there. We thought about all that was in place for when you're no longer here. And we don't want to think about that. And we don't want to have that conversation. And it was, it'll be 3 years ago next month that that summer before, so almost 3.5 years ago, my mom fell. And the way their kitchen is, the refrigerator was across from the end of kind of an L-shaped counter. So just a walk through space to get to the dining room area. And when she fell, the way she was in there, my dad couldn't get the leverage to help get her up. And I mean, they're older. My dad was, he just turned 83. So he was 80 at the time. My mom was 77, and he couldn't help her up. And so they had to call 911. And here come my brother and sister-in-law along. So this was 2021. And they had kind of had a routine from when COVID hit of stopping by, checking on mom and dad for a while. They would get their groceries and drop them off at the house for them and stuff. And so my brother and sister-in-law happened to stop by, and there's a big old fire truck and a paramedics outside my parents' house. So my brother goes flying in, and there's my mom sitting on the kitchen floor at this point, flirting with the firemen, John. Flirting with the cute firemen, telling them how handsome they are. But that was a huge eye opener for my brother and I. And now the hospitals there were still where you couldn't have anybody go in with you. So they transported my mom. They wanted to take her, not just have my dad take her. So they transported my mom, and my dad followed the ambulance, and he sat in the parking lot while they did an MRI, CAT scan, and all this thing on my mom. And that was when we formally found out she had been diagnosed with dementia. Now, unbeknownst to my brother and I, she'd been diagnosed the year before This is when parents try to protect their kids. Please don't.
Mhm.
Your kids are strong and you need their support and they need to know what's going on with you. But because all of that scenario happened, we found out the definitive diagnosis, everything. So next month will be 3 years that I got on a plane and flew home and we pulled out the red folder. And you said you might not cry, but I might.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. No,
that's
you're not going to
when
do it. Be strong now. You're
I
not going to
know,
do
just
it.
clench your butt cheeks. That's what
Yeah.
they say. Um, but that's when we sat down and we had the conversations, and they were emotional for all of us. My
Mhm.
brother, myself, my mom, and my dad talking about what they want and don't want in their later years. It was emotional. Like talking about your mortality. And I think for my parents, it was more emotional then than if we'd sat down 10, 15 years ago when they first brought up the red folder. Because for them, their mortality it's so much closer to the end now than it was then. But we brought out the red folder and we looked at all of those things. And my parents, you know, they didn't have anything set up. Luckily, my dad retired from the Navy after 20 years. And so for them, it wasn't a life insurance that paid the house payment, but my dad's retirement from the Navy always paid the mortgage payment.
Yep.
And so, a similar situation in that way. And then when I had to bring my parents here 2 years ago to live with me, they stayed in the same house I grew up in too. And
I
so a house
remember.
they paid
I
40.
remember when you were doing that, Natalie. I
Yeah.
remember when you were flying home and bringing them there. I remember that like
Yeah.
it was yesterday. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
rem-
And they stayed in that same house like your mom has. And they bought that house in 1979 for $40,000. And here we were in 2022 selling it for almost 10 times that much. And so
Yep.
while they didn't have the life insurance and the living benefits that now, based on their age and their health, they couldn't qualify for, they
Mhm.
had done that right. And so that's where we were able to take that money and put it someplace so that we're never going to have to pick less than as far as care goes for my parents as they continue to decline. Um, and it benefits from that perspective. But that's the unfortunate thing about our parents' generation is there was life insurance around, but now there's so much added on to the life insurance that can make an incredible difference in
Mhm.
what those last years can look like.
Yep.
Like you said, being able to take that financial stress off your shoulders when the medical bills are piling up and you just want to be able to be there, to be able to step away from work if you need to take care of somebody or something like that.
Mhm.
Those are the things that really matter that are built within a life insurance policy. Yeah, it's great to have something when they're gone, but to have something so you can maximize the time they're still here, that's the real game changer, right?
Yep. And I like I know that we're talking about life insurance and whatnot, and not everybody can qualify for it, right? That's the
Yeah.
the one negative and one downside of it, right? If you don't get it early enough and something happens to you, right, then you're never going to be able to qualify for it. But for like your parents' situation, right? Obviously, like with my mom's situation, she still has the house and all that kind of stuff. She has a lot of equity in the house and all that stuff. But being able to, that's an asset. Using that home as an asset, right? That's why people buy homes and stuff like that because they're assets, right? But being able to make money on that money. I mean, $40,000 in 1979 and 10 times more than that, in 2022, right? Being able to take that money and put it somewhere, right? Where you don't need to qualify as well,
Yep.
right? But you also have the protection of your health on there too,
Yep.
right? Because there are things out there that can help you, right? If you do like your mom getting dementia. My wife's grandmother passed away with dementia as well, right? With nothing in place to protect her,
Yeah.
right? Or anything like the poor lady was just an amazing, amazing person. And to watch the last years and what my mother-in-law had to go through and um, taking care of her in a nursing and an assisted living home where they didn't treat her the best.
Yeah.
Right. My mother-in-law was there every single day after work, before work, taking care of her, making sure that she, took a shower, make sure she was eating because nobody there was actually doing that.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? But knowing that we can utilize that asset to put it somewhere as well, right? And protect some of, protect our health on that aspect too. God forbid we can't do two of the activities of daily living, right? And we're able to access that money as well, right?
Yep.
So there's so much to and so much that we can do to help, right? We just need to get it out to as many people as we can, right?
Yeah.
And have that conversation and have that
Yeah,
conversation.
I mean, that's what it really comes down to is the conversation to understand their scenario. Because the one thing our parents' generation was good at was saving, especially because the majority of them were a one income household, right? You
Mhm.
didn't have both parents working, you didn't have daycare like you have today and all of that. And so one parent was usually the breadwinner, the other one was at home making sure everything happened, everybody stayed alive and everybody got fed and all that kind of stuff, but they saved. Now our generation comes along and the world has shifted. Every single day it's in our face. Spend on this, spend on that, zero interest, blah, 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 whatever. And so we have two incomes coming in, but we have 10 times the pressure to spend everything we have coming in. So, in our situations, if we don't take the time to put these policies in place, if we don't take the time to learn what's available, or for you and I as financial professionals to get out there and share this information to save people's lives, to protect people's families, then there's not going to be even a standalone life insurance policy that pays when you're gone in a lot of cases, because that education, it isn't given in our schools like you said, and our parents only know what they learned along the way to teach us, and it's not a full or robust financial education. And so that's why that's the first thing we start with, is to make people understand why we do what we do and how important it is. And then we start building block on block to put together an actual wealth plan for that family that includes that protection on the back end of a trust.
Yep.
And that's when you really leave a financial legacy, in addition to the everyday legacy you're building in the relationships you have with your family. But without that, we're just flipping a coin, and that was the biggest conversation that we had with my parents. Is my mom's mom had had a stroke, and I was about 6 or 7 years old when she had her stroke, I think. Well, no, I was 10. I was 10 when she had her stroke, and I was 16 when she passed away. But she spent 6 years in a nursing home, and her stroke was severe enough she couldn't walk. Um, and she only spoke her native language, which is Tongan. That's where my mom's from. And so us younger kids, we couldn't even understand what she was saying. And her memory was, when I would go, she would get mad at my mom when my mom would tell her that she was her daughter, because she would look at me and think I was her mom. So her memory from that stroke was back far enough to when my mom was little. So she couldn't understand this woman telling her, "I'm Ivani, I'm your daughter." She's like, she'd get mad. And we did the same thing. We went, my mom, my sweet grandpa, he would ride the city bus because he couldn't drive anymore, every single day to sit with her. And, we would go up there at least once a week. I know my mom went more often than that, but nursing homes or care facilities were not then what they are today. They have definitely come a long way, but there's a price tag that comes along with that as well.
Yep.
And my mom's biggest fear was being in a nursing home because of what she saw her mom go through.
Mhm.
And, that does play into me being a caretaker, but it's also something I wanted to do. The whole point of all of this, though, is life insurance, living benefits. They give you those options, because being a caretaker is not for everyone. And so if you're in a position, or even if you want to be one, sometimes it's taken away from you based on the diagnosis. The care that they need is beyond what you could ever give them. And so having these products in place, having this protection in place, means that you can give them as much as possible to live those final years in dignity and make sure they have the best care. If you can't give them to them, you have the means to put them in a place that they're going to get the best care, not just get by. They're going to get fed, they're going to get showered, all of those kind of things.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. Um, so you mentioned that the interest from the money that your mom put away always paid the house payment. But are there some other initial expenses that part of that money was able to pay for as well? Like medical bills or things like that? Or were you guys, because of the business, you guys were able to maintain that? Um,
So now, geez, now you're asking my memory now.
I'm
Wow.
asking your 22-year-old self
Yeah.
what you remember.
Yeah. Um, so I think it was mostly just the mortgage that was able to be paid. Now about a year and a half after my dad passed away, now he was 49 years old when he died,
Mm.
and it was 3 weeks before his 50th birthday. But the money and then after about a year and a half, 2 years is when me and my mom decided to that we weren't going to keep the gas station. So we ran it for about a year and a half, 2 years after my dad passed away.
Okay.
Um, so she also sold the gas station as well. So and she got a nice chunk from that as well. So that was able to help big time with some of the expenses as well. But for the life insurance itself, it was most of it. Now, my dad's running a business. Now, this is where our job comes so important, right? Because
Yeah.
my mom didn't get millions of dollars from a life insurance policy, right? My dad was protected, right? But he probably didn't have enough.
Yeah.
He probably didn't have enough, but thankfully, right? Thankfully, selling the gas station gave my mom a little bit more added income to that, right? And
Yeah.
like I said, she was working and all that stuff and whatnot, right? And then so my dad had enough money to pay enough life insurance to be able to pay for the mortgage, but the added money from the gas station sell as well was a big help for a lot of the other things, right? Because
Yeah.
my dad owning the business, my mom, just like you said, back that generation, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, right? She did it. She did. My mom did have she had her beautician license, so she did haircuts and stuff like that, right? She actually owned a salon in New York City where her sisters, but she started doing that like on the side, right? So she was a stay-at-home mom, and then she would, cut hair on her free time or whatever, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
when my dad passed away, right? Yeah, she had a nice chunk of change or whatever to help pay the bills and stuff like that. But my mom, let's be real, my mom never really had a W-2 job, right? And she went back to work, right?
Yeah.
She went back to work at that time, right? Because she started getting you start getting bored. Start getting bored. You want to do something, right?
Mhm.
So the life insurance helped with the mortgage and then the sale of the house. Now, my mom's very private, right? She's very private, just like we're talking about. We don't want to talk about money. We
Yep.
don't talk about money, right? So it was very a private situation with her as well, right? She didn't really want to let us know, me and my sister, about any of that stuff. Like she had her financial people in play, and they were helping her. She didn't kind of look. I mean, I was 22 years old, 23 years old, right at the time. What do I know, right? What
Right.
do what do I know, right? But she would, like I said, she was very private, and even to this day, right? She's still very private. It's that generation. It's that generation that
Yeah.
doesn't really want to talk about money too much. You know what I mean? So I don't know the logistics of everything. I just know that the interest that she was getting from everything was paying for the mortgage, right?
Okay.
And that's basically what I know from that. Um, you know, the I'm trying to think here. Trying to think. So
Well, and it makes sense that, with the gas station, because you guys kept the gas station going, which I think probably had to be a bit of another stress. And like you said, you're sitting in your dad's chair, right? You're
Mhm.
continuing to build the legacy that he created. Um, but you guys maintained that. And so, yeah, you had the life insurance policy, but he had also built something else that ended up being an asset that
Yes.
when you guys decided, we're not going to keep this going, and this isn't my dream, dad's not here anymore, you were able to sell that and utilize those funds. So another leg of a financial legacy he left behind
Yep.
that helped take care of things. But let me ask you this part, as far as what you can remember, right? There's the financial piece of dealing with whatever lands on your plate when a loved one passes away. But from the emotional perspective, um you know were there emotional challenges tied to kind of managing that life insurance payout, the sale of the gas station, that because they were there, they um lifted some of the weight of the financial things? But what were some of maybe the emotional challenges, or because you had those resources, the lack of emotional challenge because you knew that you were going to be able to take care of things? If Does that question make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm an emotional person. So yes, there was 100% emotion tied to this, right? My dad owned that gas station for 30 years, right? That's how I know him. That's where he was all the time, right? Um when we were selling it, right? There was things that were happening. Now, oh, you got to fix this, you got to fix that, you got to do this, you got to do that. All these different things that were popping up that we had to do to sell it and all this kind of stuff or whatever. And I'm not gonna mention any names or any of that stuff, right? But the oil industry over the years has
Mhm.
changed dramatically. Dramatically, it changed where when he first now he bought this gas station for like $20,000 back in the day, right?
Yeah.
He used to work there, right? So he used to work there, and then the person that was running it or whatever got into some financial problems and stuff like that, and my dad winded up buying the business from him, right? But there was an emotional attachment where you know like I said, the industry had started changing. And as I was getting older, right, and I started working with my dad at the gas station, he started telling me stories and all this kind of stuff. He would always win awards from the company that he had. Well, like I said, I'm not mentioning any names. But he would always win awards. They would take him to baseball games. They would take him to trainings and do all these things, right? But then it started to be they sold off, right, to a real estate company.
Yeah.
Now it started being more of a investment property for these companies and whatnot. But and as the change and as I started realizing, as my dad was telling me stories of how it used to be and how it changed, right? And I saw the stress that he was going through, right? Me being 22 years old and selling this gas station and then having the, I guess, corporate people coming down as we were selling, and they're giving you all these instructions. I'm be straight with you. I lost my stuff. All right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say any words, right? But
Yeah.
I lost it, right? And I went off on them. I went off on them, because I saw the stress that my dad was going through with it as they were changing, right? And I'll be straight with you. I blamed them for my dad getting sick.
Mm.
I blamed them, right? I was battling with my own internal battle with myself of losing my dad, right?
Yeah.
And having to sell the gas station and do all these things, right? And like, so I blamed them. I blew up on them right in the middle of the gas station. Yeah, I lost it. It was everything just hitting me at once.
Yeah.
It was everything hitting me at once. And I remember going out, like after I did that, I went out and I just started walking down the street, and I'm just like, just enough, like, just enough. Just, well, we're going to do what we have to do. Like, just get rid of this thing. We
Yeah.
don't, you know what I mean? Like, just asking God, just, hey, like, no more, just please, just no more. We're my mom, my sister, myself, we're all going through so much already. Like, just let the rest of it go smoothly. You know what I mean? And then I
Yeah.
went back and, you know, I apologized to everybody. You know what I mean? I apologized, like, and they understood what we were going through. You know what I mean? But yes, was there an emotional? Yes, it was
Yeah.
definitely emotional, and I did not handle it professionally. Let's put it that way.
Well, and I think, I think that's an important component to talk about because whether those funds are all there, if your dad's insurance policy had been enough to, I don't know, hire somebody to deal with taking care of the sale so you guys didn't have to go there, or whatever that looked like, how much a life insurance policy is, or and whether or not it provides while somebody's still alive or not, it's not necessarily going to eliminate the emotional transactions that have to take
Mhm.
place, right? But what it can do is give you the ability to kind of breathe through the process and to lean on the people who are the most important to you, to be able to focus on that time and getting through that um in one piece, you know?
Yep.
And and again, that's where the trust piece comes into. I think so many people, look at, like, one of my dad's big concerns with their financial situation was they didn't want my brother and I to be in a position where we felt we had to fight for anything. And so literally from the time we became adults, my parents always said everything's split in the will 50-50. It's split in the will 50-50. If you can't agree on it, it gets sold and you split the money.
Mhm.
And it's just me and my brother. So um when I went back almost 3 years ago, we opened the red folder to identify everything that was there and wasn't there. The first thing I did was start the trust process for them. So every asset was within that trust,
Mhm.
and and then the trust had the language of how things would be split, right? The will exists within the trust dictates how everything happens.
Yep.
But that's the other thing that's so important, even in life insurance, setting up those beneficiaries and the percentages, having contingent beneficiaries. So if a beneficiary passes away before the person whose life is protected, then who gets the money? And
Right.
how is that all structured and handled is important as well. Um, but not just the security a life insurance policy can provide, but the room to deal with those emotions because they're going to be there. There's no amount of money that could replace your dad, right? So there
Yep.
were going to be emotions either way. And I mean, a blessing that in the long run, being able to sell the gas station, alleviated additional financial concerns that may have come up, but still a process to go through
Mhm.
in all of that for sure. So
Yep.
I know we've talked about it a little bit throughout this, but wrapping things up, like, kind of give me let's button it up with circling back on how the experience of losing your dad and the fact that he had life insurance and what that means, that's meant for your family so far and what it means going forward for your mom. How does all of that shape your views even before you got into the business, but especially now that you understand the full benefits that life insurance offers? How's that shaped your views on life insurance and then financially planning properly for the future?
So real quick, I just want to touch on the trust aspect, what you just said, right? Because me and
Yeah,
my wife, Tony, did the same thing, right? We now have a trust set up, but and anybody that's thinking about it or thinks that it's so expensive or any of that kind of stuff, it's really not, right? But it's so important because there are things and questions that are asked in there that you don't even think about.
right.
You don't think about at all, right? It was such a huge eye opener. But to circle back, um, for the on the importance of the life insurance and why I got into this business and financial right, because right now everything in this world, right, gets better, it gets worse, it changes, right? And understanding on the benefits that insurance, not just life insurance, the benefits that insurance
Hmm.
gives a person, a family, a business owner, whatever it is, right? The benefits of it are so important to learn and to understand,
Yeah.
right? Yes, life insurance is going to provide protection for your family if something happens to me, my wife, whoever it is, right? Yes, but it has come such a long way that there are so many additional benefits that you can gain with an insurance product right now. And that's my biggest takeaway from learning this industry because life insurance, you think of that about it and it's you think about, oh, when I die, my wife is going to get this. When I die, my kids are going to get this, right? And it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It really honestly is not, right? And there's so many different things and there's so many different companies out there. That's why I planted my flag here with this, right? Is because we have so many different companies as well because every single company has typical and they have similar things, similar products, but they all have their different bells and whistles to meet
Yeah.
people's needs, right? And that's what shapes it for me, right? Is everybody's need is completely different, right? And we can go and help them with the proper solution, right? So that's what it's for me, honestly. You know,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, life insurance today is not just if you die too young, it's if you live too long.
yeah,
And 65% plus of Americans are going to run into some kind of chronic, critical, or terminal illness along the way. That's where living benefits matter. And if you watch the news at all, if you're on social media at all, you see the things, the health struggles people are going through, the losses people are experiencing of a loved one, and the impact that it makes. Um, Especially when they still have children at home,
yep,
especially when they still have college to pay for. And I mean, it's a burden to carry for any family to lose a loved one, and a burden in the sense of just the weight of that loss in general. So to be able to avoid the financial burden on top of that is a game changer. Like I
yep,
said, no amount of money was going to replace your dad, but knowing that the pressure isn't there on top of that, like you can't even focus on losing your loved one because you're trying to figure out how to make a house payment or a car payment or how to find a job if you've been a stay-at-home parent and you've just lost your spouse. um, the weight of that from a financial perspective on top of the other literally paralyzes people every single day, and we see the good and the bad of that in being in our industry. But I know it's why you and your beautiful wife Tony, she's one of my favorite people. That's
mine
why you
too.
guys are yeah, she's okay. But that's why you guys are so passionate. It's why I'm so passionate too. And I love that you talked about the fact that planting our flag with the company we did at Universal Wealth is about being able to offer everything that's out there and tailor make plans for our clients that truly fit their families and their needs, because it's not a cookie cutter, here's your box lunch, everybody's happy situation. There are truly different needs and different scenarios in every single family, and we have the ability to truly address each one of those things based on the priorities of that individual and that family. And that right there is a game changer at a whole other level. So,
There is.
John, I'm incredibly grateful to have this time with you. I'm beyond grateful that you took the time to sit down with me today and to share your story. I'm proud of you. I make most of the guys cry, and you did not. So kudos to you. You can tell everybody.
I gave myself a pep talk right before we got on here. We're gonna get through it.
Yeah, you made it through an interview with Natalie without breaking down. I mean, I cannot say the same, but y'all know I'm emotional when it comes to these things. So, but I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for your example and your mentorship. And I look forward to continuing to work with you and Tony for a lot of years to come.
Me too, Natalie. Like I said in the beginning, I'm super proud of you, and what you're doing. I appreciate you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
It was.
Awesome. Yep.
We'll definitely do it again in the future for sure. So Well, thank you everyone for listening, for joining us today on the Nickels and Dimes podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and I look forward to continuing to bring you amazing content each week that will educate you, support you, and most importantly, help you to find financial freedom. I look forward to having you listen and learn in future episodes. And until then, take care and stay safe.